Okay, so when we get in here, especially in Arizona, it's dry and dusty and windy, especially during the monsoon seasons. You can tell when a unit hasn't been maintained by either us or another air conditioning company. You're going to have cobwebs in here, dust in here, and this dust and these cobwebs can get settled in between electrical components and cause scoring, and can eventually cause failures in the system. So what we'll go through here and dust it out. This also helps us and future technicians, because sometimes these get so dirty you can't even tell the difference in the color of the wires. So when we're trying to trace wires and figure out what's going on and we can't see the color, it's more dangerous for our technicians, and it, like I said, can lead to unnecessary failures. We replace these contactors. In fact, you can tell this contactor has been replaced since this unit was installed. This unit's from 2011. This contactor is not that old. So try to do our best to go through here and clear this out for this maintenance and any future repairs that might be needed.
And then on that, can you tell us, is there fuses in the disconnect? Did you already check that? Are you checking that next?
So after we verify that the system is running, we're going to go ahead and turn off the system. The thermostat will stay set to the temperature, so when we plug it back in, it will turn back on. We'll be able to check the refrigerant. But before we mess with anything in here, we're going to want to turn off the breakers. So sometimes that can be tricky if they're not labeled correctly, but in this case, they're back here.
Always a 2-pole breaker on these systems.
So we have AC right here,
Just heard that kick off over there.
and that sound is fairly normal. That's your reversing valve shutting off and the refrigerant flow balancing out, so it might be a hissing sound. Sometimes we get calls and people worrying about that sound. That's normal.
You'd hear that same sound if you just kicked your thermostat from cool to off.
So this system,
I'm going to go ahead and say one thing, Luke. This house, in case people caught on video, this is a weird house. At some point, what we noticed was the condenser used to be over here. That's a service disconnect with fuses. Line set goes out the wall there, underground, back up to connect to the system, and they put another service disconnect. So it's kind of a trick question I had for Luke, was to see if he'd check that, because earlier we noticed that it had the second service disconnect.
so again, just like inside the cabinet of the unit, inside here, there can be a lot of dust buildup, or even creatures might set up a house in here. But you want to check that, pull the disconnect out. Another thing that can happen with our large temperature fluctuations in Arizona, especially if you have aluminum wires, the aluminum will expand and contract, and that creates motion. So we go in here and we check your electrical connections and tighten them, because a loose connection can cause all kinds of problems, including tripping the breaker, turning off your system. And most of us have seen one of these disconnects completely melt from a bad connection that gets hot and then causes damage to the system. It can also cause voltage fluctuations, which will eventually wear out components in your system. So having this routinely done will keep those connections nice and tight, so that you don't run into that problem.
Yeah, we'll see. On some of them, this is a nicer one. I noticed it was a Mars disconnect. On some of them, you'll get like a builder grade with just a pure plastic handle and those copper blades, and we'll show up and they'll just be warped and you can't even get them off. So the next guy that comes along just gets stuck having to, kick that thing off or only use the breaker, and it's just kind of a pain the whole time.
Yeah, I actually had a customer ask me the other day, can a service disconnect go bad? And the answer is absolutely, happens all the time. And not only is it dangerous for a technician working on your home, if you have a bad disconnect. But it also, a bad disconnect will have will cause problems in your system if you don't have consistent power to your system. So we'll do the same thing over here.
Yeah, might as well check this one while we're at it.
Since the connections are all, again, that kind of stuff. You don't want dust and dirt getting in between your electrical contacts. It will spark, melt, blacken, and cause damage.
Okay, people are probably seeing on the video that unit, the window unit right there. Just take note, we don't work on those. They don't have refrigerant ports. They don't use capacitors. Essentially, if they go bad, we recommend people go to Home Depot and just buy a new one.
It's going to cost more to work on it than it would cost to just get a new one.
Yep, and all that matters is the size. You get the dimensions, pull that one out, you can slide a new one in that's the same size. Now this one actually had fuses as well. The other disconnect didn't. You don't want, you know, 2 sets of fuses on the system anyway. And here you do have that aluminum wiring.
Mm-hmm. So sometimes you don't know, and it can be deceiving. It's copper from here to there, but it's aluminum in here. So each of those had a little bit of looseness to them. And even these that are the copper connections. So just that high and low temperatures in Arizona will make those wires expand and contract just ever so slightly, but it will loosen up those connections over time. So having routine maintenance prevents them getting so loose that you have a failure.
We're imagining the only reason there's 2 disconnects is that AC unit used to be there. This must be a kid's bedroom. It was probably getting noisy, letting that noise through there. Here is the master bathroom or closet. So that noise is kind of isolated if this system is loud, or sometimes you get that start and stop sound that bugs people in the night. So I'm sure that's why they moved it over there. Or they had a trailer that was coming through and that condenser was just in the way right here of parking, so they shifted it back. But either way, we've seen condensers relocated for both of those reasons.